life. Let's talk anime, art, and cartoons tonight. Lightbox, the way to live way.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome back for another month. Welcome to Lightbox, the official Wanimate podcast, the West Australian Animation Association. And whether you're an aspiring animator, a seasoned professional, or simply a fan of the magical world of animation, you've come to the right place.
Cool.
My name is
Love our
Tanya.
new title.
Nice.
I'm David O'Connell.
I'm Lindsay Flay.
And we'll be your guides on this monthly journey into the heart of the animation industry in Western Australia. Each month, Lightbox will bring you the latest and greatest in animation news, from upcoming films and shows to industry discussions that will inspire and empower the talented animators that call Western Australia home. We'll also delve into the creative processes and challenges faced by our local animators as they work tirelessly to bring their unique visions to life. So buckle up and get ready to be amazed as we explore the vibrant, ever-evolving world of West Australian animation. This is Lightbox, and we're about to get started. Before we go on, we want to acknowledge and honour the traditional custodians of the land we're streaming from, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We recognise and celebrate their enduring culture, the rich tapestry of Indigenous arts, and the invaluable contributions they make to the vibrancy and cultural diversity of the city and region.
And finally, before we dive into today's content, I'd just like to issue a quick advisory warning. While our channel is generally suitable for most audiences, there are some occasions we delve into topics or showcase content that might not be appropriate for younger viewers. We strive to create engaging, enjoyable content for everyone, but just be advised that some material may not be suitable for children. So basically, I'm saying parental discretion is advised. We encourage you to review the content before sharing it with younger audiences. Our goal is to provide a safe and enjoyable viewing experience for all, and we appreciate your understanding and support. Let's go.
Onto the news. So, cool. Let's talk about the news because it's Oscar period.
Yep. Okay, so can we first offer congratulations? Flo, for the best animated feature, and In the Shadow of the Cypress for best animated short. I believe that's an Iranian film, if I'm
Iranian
correct?
film, yeah.
Yeah, about PTSD. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Looks
Great
like
style too. I love the design of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is quite beautiful. Yeah. And
but yes, Flow is getting out there and getting a few good reviews. It's still not officially released here, though there have been preview screenings.
Yeah, we had preview screenings in January. We've got a few preview screenings last weekend. I think we might even get a few preview screenings this weekend. It's officially hitting the cinemas March 20th. So that's fairly soon.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. And it's the first Oscar-winning Blender film. So
Yes,
yeah.
of course that'll let a few cats amongst the pigeons, I'm sure.
If you don't count into the Spider-Verse, which included a lot of Blender in its pipeline, but Flow, purely done in Blender as far as I'm aware. So
cool. And there was another award through the period we're off air as well. So basically, the Berlin International Film Festival has been and gone, the Berlinale. And yes, congratulations to Lesbian Space Princess from South Australia. The film took the Teddy Award for Best Feature Film. So it's a first time feature film director, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
South Australians. So really big news. It's really, really cool. So
again, can't wait to see that as well.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to see everything. So hopefully we get some screenings soon.
All right. Should we leap into what's coming soon and what's out now? So, all right. So I'm just going at some of the main things out now. So you've got Sakamoto Days, Apothecary Diary Season 2 still continuing along and doing wonderful. You've got Zenshu which is interesting. It's not quite hit stride for me yet, but it is curious. Shangri-La Frontier Season 2.
It's essentially a sequel to a mega blockbuster Chinese anime film. Apparently, this one's just as mega big as well.
Oh, you're bringing
Nija.
Nija.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting my
Nija
names
too.
mixed up. The other one's
So
very similar.
then choose the animator below it with the purple hoodie.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Oh, and Invincible Season 2, we should mention as well.
season 3.
Mm.
Season
That's
3,
Yep.
where he's had a costume change.
Yeah.
Then the Nija is out in China, and apparently it's being hailed as the biggest animation film of all time, based on box office sales.
It's showing here as well. It's been at an event for the last week.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Okay.
Looks interesting. Definitely want to see it. So
No, I just want to check it out as well. We'll see how pretty sure this is the Chinese film industry finally hitting its stride.
Yeah.
And taking off. It's getting lots of good reviews. It's apparently challenging Disney and DreamWorks and all that stuff in terms of character development and design and all that sort of stuff. So I'll be curious to see how it shakes out. Yeah, should be good.
super awesome. Okay, on to upcoming.
Okay, so March the 6th, we've got The Colors Within. So that's anime film, limited release, limited sessions. Looking like a cute sort of teenage, possibly romance, definitely band related slice of life with a little bit of psychic powers. She apparently can see colors that link people to each other. So I'm curious.
I like the style of it.
Yeah, it looks cute. The trailer I saw didn't have subtitles, so I can only go on a vibe. My Japanese is not that good. Okay, the Colors Within, Plankton the movies, also coming out on 8th of March. So more SpongeBob. On the 19th, we've got Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures, Part 2.
Season 2? Yeah. Very cool.
It's coming out, and both of those are on Disney. March 20th, we've got Flow. So, as I was saying, advanced screenings happened last week. There might be more next weekend. Check up and see. I know the Luna's showing it. I don't know if Palace is as well. So take a look and on their websites and find out. We've got Wolf King coming to Netflix on March the 20th as well.
I like the style of that one. It looks like a machinima, like arcane style feel. So I'm curious about it.
Yep, Subquest Evans says he's interested in Flow because of made mostly in Blender.
Yes, yeah. So it's going to be good when it's out there. And it won the Academy Award, like we just said. So
yes, like what 6 hours ago or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so March 27th, we've got Looney Tunes, The Day the Earth Blew Up. Thank you for actually releasing an animated film that you've done, Warner Brothers. I'm still a bit seedy about,
I'm very seedy about Wile E. Coyote versus ACME. I'm hoping at some point it leaks out. Because that actually sounded like a fantastic film.
A great premise.
By all accounts, it was going well. So,
Bearing art for tax purposes is bad. It's a pretty simple version, but it's bad.
That's a almost moral reason compared to having, say, we had a slight dip in the exchange rate and therefore die all over, which has happened. Yeah.
And finally, on April 6th, we have Dogman.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dogman based on the book series. Probably take my nephews to see that one because it's it's going to be good. So awesome.
Cool.
Yes, very much looking forward to the day the Earth blew up. Because it's been a while since we've had solid Looney Tunes on the screen that wasn't Space Jam. Yeah.
Yes. Enough for the commercial tie-ins.
Yeah.
Clockwork Orange doesn't need to be associated with Looney Tunes, honestly, people. It's pretty simple, really.
Nice.
Just don't put it in the crowd shot.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you realize we got through the news and the up and coming and under 12 minutes?
I did. We rushed through that.
Efficient. This is efficient. We must be excited about the topic.
I think we are, and it's related to what we've talked about previously as well.
So yeah, totally.
Because
we're definitely LinkedIn too.
Yeah.
Okay. I talk Chuck Jones all the time because he is my favorite animator and favorite animation director. I fell in love with his films, shorts as a kid. I've watched them over and over and over again. They're always hilarious. Sometimes because of the time they're a little bit questionable, but always amazing to look at. Yeah. So needless to say, let's talk about Chuck Jones. Master animator?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
He's one that shaped a lot of people's enjoyment of animation through the years, especially of our own generation.
Definitely. I mean, Saturday, or it wasn't just Saturday morning cartoons, but all through the afternoon, they'd usually play Warner Brothers cartoons on rotate, just like for about an hour every afternoon on television. It was like back in the day, they'd have old educational films at high school that were like 20 years out of date in primary school and high school. We'd have all these old 20 or 30-year-old shows that was recycled on television for the kids because they were cheap. And at the time, we didn't realize that we were watching some freaking classics. So, things like, what was it? The operatic one, What's Up Doc, What's Opera Doc, and
What's Opera Doc, yeah,
and all those classic ones, and so many of them. We just lost track. But every time a Chuck Jones or a Tex Avery one came up, we knew we were in for a good show. And even though we were just ignorant 70s kids, we understood. Like we got to know the really good directors on some of these things. Yeah.
All right, so let's crack on with the early years, and they'll do a print the legend version of it. So, born in 1912, his father was a businessman and he failed ventures. As part of the business enterprise, he'd always get the stationery and letterheads printed up for each of his failed businesses beforehand. So he'd have to hand those to Chuck and his family to draw up, and Chuck did. He just drew and drew and drew. So he always had a lot of stationery supplies to see him through, oddly enough. So that's why he ended up drawing. He grew up in LA. He was exposed to a lot of the film industry there. So would see a lot of Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, sort of Harold Lloyd. When he was growing up, visited the studios, and he was encouraged by his artistic talents, where he attended was it Chouinard Art Institute, CalArts?
Chouinard. Yeah,
Chouinard. Thank you. Sorry.
I think that's how it's pronounced. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, depending on which version you believe, he may have actually worked as a janitor there as well at time in his off hours. So, as I said, in the print the legend version, there's big ones out there where he studied arts and animation. Apparently, his lecturer said every person has, I think it's 100,000 bad drawings in them they need to get out. And Chuck, because he's prolific, work when he was younger, just sketching, found confidence in that statement because he'd already got the crap out there already, and could draw.
100,000 bad drawings to get out of themselves.
Yeah, I love it as a saying. I love that as a piece.
That's
like
great.
how true that is, I don't know, but that's part of the legend.
Yeah, I like it.
I think I'm about halfway through that list myself.
I'm about 2/3 through. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay,
That's good.
so after graduating, Jones started his career in Ubi Works Studio in 1931, working under Ubi Works. He struggled and worked as a cell washer in between. In betweener. Okay. Now that's kind of where Warner Brothers comes in. It wasn't Warner Brothers at the time, but it was Leon Schlesinger's production company, and they were working pretty much exclusively for Warner Brothers at that stage, but still firewall separated. That's something we should probably talk about because that's something that comes back later. Leon, as a producer, had a couple of good skills to him. One of which was he could recognize talent and was willing to let it go and do its thing where it could, even if he got into an argument with the talent. And secondly, he kind of kept things firewalled from the upper executives at Warner Brothers. So there was not a lot of studio interference coming down the line to the artists. So that was a decent sort of setup. And it was pretty much a Wild West sort of setup as well. He had a set of ramshackle studios, which ended up being called Termite Terrace. I think Tex Avery got the last of them, and he ended up getting such a rat-infested, vermin-ridden place that's what they ended up calling it. He poached any sort of established talent he could, even if they had drinking problems. There was a lot of accounts of people coming in drunk in the early 1930s days of Schlesinger Productions, and as long as they got the work done, he didn't have too much of, and it was good value. He didn't have too much of a problem with it. So it was a really Wild West sort of place. There was a lot of young up-and-coming talent and a lot of unusual talent, and there was a good sort of attitude there. It's less oversight than, say, was at Walt Disney at the time and later, and a lot of the animators that learnt their craft under that sort of banner had problems when they moved to Disney for a while, including Jones, who stuck there for, I think, 6 months during the 40s and didn't end up with anything to his credit for the time. When he left, he stated the only job he really wanted to be kept on with is Walt's job. So, okay, so that's that. So that was the sort of environment that Jones sort of came into, working in, I think he started sometime in the mid-1930s. I should mention he also briefly worked at Walt's Land Studio, so the creator of Woody Woodpecker. But yeah, Leon Schlesinger's productions seemed to be the better fit for him. Kind of. There was some friction every so often, but on the whole, yeah. So in the early 1930s, Schlesinger's production was really, though, despite having animating talent, despite having kind of getting things organized as far as being able to produce the work, it didn't have any hits. It didn't have any standout stars. The one star the studio was founded on is pretty much a hate crime, I think, to African America. It really is a racist caricature that's just horrible. Buddy,
Is that
the
Tex-
Buddy
Sorry,
the
go on.
one. Sorry, yeah, go. Buddy
No,
the.
I think we've got a delay here.
Go on,
Once
Lindsay.
again, wasn't that to do with Tex Avery, if I remember rightly? Because he was
So
one of their...
Tex Avery did Snow White and the Seven, Snow Black and the Seven
right.
Dwarfs, which
Yeah.
is
amazing,
should be bad.
Amazing animation. Yeah, amazing animation.
no,
Oh my god, it has not aged at all well.
Yeah, there's look, honestly, there's going to be a fair few animations of this period and later that will not have aged well. I mean, we won't come to Chuck Jones isn't directly involved in Speedy Gonzales, but Speedy Gonzales and the racial stereotypes that come out there, and like during '60s Warner Brothers, they were pretty much churning out. It was Speedy and Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote were the main sort of things pushing them forwards for cartoons because that's what the public demanded. I think if we're gonna talk about that, that's a whole can of worms which we can open on another night. I think.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
so.
Yeah.
We can totally
But
talk about it.
look, long story short, they were struggling for characters. Buddy, the character that they ended up trying to spin, was just a bit of an everyman character, and too much an everyman character. It was just bland. They kind of hit on their first success with what was it? 1930s Merry Melodies, and it's
Really,
I
the
haven't
characters that sorry,
yeah, it's
the characters
character-
that popped out were Elmer and Porky. So
Yeah. It's the 1930s. I haven't got a hat. You've got Elmer and Porky. Porky's introduced in that, but they're looking at a talent show for about 4 other characters, all of which didn't come to be, but they did try to spin them. The main one that stood out there was Porky, and Porky kind of slowly developed to become their first real star. Later on being paired up with Daffy Duck, and they kind of found their formula from there. So that's the basics for the 1930s, and obviously,
so Chuck's first directing job was for an animation. For an animation called The Night Watchman. So he was 26 years old, 1938. The Night Watchman, which was basically a cute little cat who took over his father's job to look after a warehouse, and there's some sleazy rats that come in. I actually haven't seen this one.
It's his first credited director or debut. There's references that there's some claims that he was working with Bob Clampett as a co-director before that for about 2 years, and that kind of gave some friction to the relationship later on. But I haven't seen this one either. But it's the period that he's kind of struggling to find a direction. He's doing cute Disney-esque sort of short films. He's trying to make, was it Sniffles the Mouse, which is kind of the proto sort of Fievel, really. It looks like Fievel was based on that to work, and it's just not kind of doing what it needs to. He's solid. He's a good director. He's got a good art style. He's working his crew all right, but he's just not getting a voice.
Nothing's standing out.
Yeah. So oddly enough, that's why he's sort of during that period in the early 40s, he's assigned to a lot of other kind of work. So things that need to be done for propaganda for the war industries, for example. Later on, you get a lot of that, which we'll come to in a bit with Private Snafu. But do you want to talk about, Tanya, how Chuck did find his voice in 1942 for the Dover Boys?
So the Dover Boys was a bit of an experimental film on Warner Brothers' part. Like Chuck had took everything that he'd learned under the older animators. Geez, my mind's gone blank.
Is this the Disney dudes?
No. Well, he was under Ubai Works for a little while, but when he was at Warner's, Tex Avery and Fritz Friedling and Bob Clampett, he was working with primarily. So he does have a lot of that Tex Avery flavor, though it seems to be a lot less crass and a lot more polished.
Also, Tex was part of their first big hits as well. Tex was the comedic genius at the time.
Yeah. So what is it? The Dover Boys, was really an experiment in smear animation and trying a new way of doing things. Chuck, who was a cell washer, which basically meant this is why a lot of the early Warner Brothers cells, like Disney, you can buy old classic movie cells. Warner Brothers, you can't, because they were washing, cleaning, and reusing those cells. So any cells are particularly rare from Warner's. And he knew the efficiency, how much time and space needed to be saved to make those cells work. So there's a lot of smear animation, a lot of holds. He's really playing around with his comic timing in the Dover Boys. It's your old school, your young rich boys at university type animation. And the Dover Boys of Pimento U, good old PU. It's great. Really, really nice. And the character, I wish the characters had stayed around a little bit longer than one short, because Dan Backslide is actually quite a nice character.
Amazing villain.
He's a greasy, slimy villain, and it really works. But it seemed to be the worst thing about him, that he was a non-pious drinker and
gambler and smoker.
So he had a few vices, but there's nothing particularly villainous about him, except when he kidnaps Penelope Standpipe. And
can we take a moment to just say how amazing Penelope Standpipe is as a piece of animation as well? Rigid almost all the time, moves at the feet and occasionally the arms and hands, and it's just perfect.
Just in terms of how smooth that animation is, remember, none of that is being digitally tweened. That character is hand animated, sliding along that floor perfectly, and it's she in one scene she does a complete loop around a set of stairs, and it's just really nice smooth animation, and she just drifts around like a drift car. It's great. Yeah.
Isn't this essentially the beginnings of limited animation? I mean, not at 24 frames a second, but that simple stylized look.
Yes, I have a funny feeling that a lot of this is also coming from MGM as well. So Tex had worked with MGM and Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera were really pushing the limited animation, because they were trying to make things cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, because they knew they were preparing for TV. So Tex had been working with them. He carried that through, and because Chuck was around all that, and Walter Lantz, of course, was doing the same thing. So the limited animation was really starting to happen. I think a lot of that carries through in the Dover Boys, and it's Warner's attempt to see if they can do something that's really dynamic but limited as well.
Well, I guess it was in the air, wasn't it, with television starting to emerge?
Yeah.
Because that would have presented a real problem for animation, because television had this huge problem, and that there was this gigantic maw that had to be fed. And so a lot of early
Yeah,
television just looks like radio. So animation would have been trembling in its boots, like, oh, how do we fill this thing?
In the 1940s, not so much of a problem. That's going to come into chat around about the 50s as well, because there's a few social changes that we can sort of point to. And like for the Dover Boys, it's one of the things that they say is quite influential for UPA going forwards as well. And a lot of the animation style for the 50s, which you will get that minimal background character related. And I guess in some ways that's also coming from things like postmodern staging as well, because you'd have that sort of idea coming through from the play, showing how, the play could be staged with a blank stage, just a chair, couple of chairs, and that is the stage. That's absence of space is actually part of the play. Yeah.
Like from Dover Boys, Gerald McBoing Boing is only like 8 years later. So if you're looking at that sort of really, really limited backgrounds and things like that. Around that time.
It's like Hollywood discovered graphic design in that decade. It sort of feels like. Because that's
a lot of that was driven by Milt Kahl, who was largely experimental through the Disney studio, and his stuff was really supported.
You would have also had a lot of European influences coming over in the 1930s for various reasons, and we wonder what that could be. And I guess going forward in the 40s, GIs coming back home as well after being exposed to the.
Very, very cool. We've got also the Aristocat, which is just the year after the Dover Boys at Pimento U, which is a little bit more comedic. It borrows quite a lot from Tom and Jerry. Pampered aristocratic cat left alone in his mansion and tricked by his mouse butler. So, it's kind of the beginning of Chuck's exaggerated expressions and using more of a psychological leaning in his animations, I suppose, in that time. So
certainly character centric.
Definitely characters.
So that's basically what you ended up getting as Chuck's style, and it's something he developed over the next 10 years quite well. Minimal backgrounds, character-centric storytelling, strong use of cinematic editing to actually tell the story as well. All right. So the 1940s. Let's move on a little bit. We're still it's still not officially Warner Brothers till 44. So you see the creation of Bugs Bunny slowly develop over the course of, I think, about 4 or 5 different shorts to actually
evolutionary. Actually,
I'd love to go into, like, sometime we're going to do an episode on Bugs is Bunny and how that came about. And one of those was Chuck Jones doing a hair as well, and it was a take on the Porky Pig Daffy Duck Duck Hunt
that's it,
animation, but just substituting what would be a proto Bugs character there in his 3rd or 4th outing. But very soon in the 1940s, Bugs Bunny came fully fledged and was the breakout character for Warner Brothers, and would pretty much be their going forwards, their mascot. You also had, after Pearl Harbor, war propaganda becoming a pretty major thing for US government and Warner Brothers as a studio as well. So you had a lot of the animators working on things for the GIs. So what this is Private Snafu, written by Dr. Seuss, oddly enough. Sorry, I can't remember the writer's actual name now.
I think we all forget it.
Yeah, it doesn't.
No one remembers when you say Dr. Seuss now.
Yeah. Fair enough. So yeah, and these were a series of educational films for the GIs, talking about loose lips, rumors, coming back, booby traps, just general information. And it was considered that because of illiteracy rates, it was easier to get this information in a short, enjoyable form, and cartoons was the medium of choice. They are often more adult and occasionally bluer, often incredibly racist. Again, we're at that. Anything portraying the Japanese at that time was horrible.
Grotesque.
Yeah. But that was a lot of the work going around while America was gearing up and heading into war.
Mm-hmm.
In 1944, Schlesinger sells the studio wholesale to Warner Brothers. So there's this change in attitude, but the producer they do get in charge of them, Eddie Selzer, still manages to keep that firewall between the rest of the Warner Brothers and the animators. So they did have to adjust, but Eddie continued with a similar sort of idea that he would give most of them free reign for the most part, and not be as interfering as it comes later on in the relationship, say 60s and 70s. Yep. So during this period as well that Chuck was first paired with Michael Maltese, storyboarder and writer, and that was a friendship or business relationship that would last for quite a while, and pretty much be responsible for the creation of Pepe Le Pew, and later on Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. They apparently liked dissecting how action and drama was actually performed. So later on, when you do get Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, there's a very specific set of rules that the chase is applied to, and it's a very niche sort of set of circumstances. There's a great understanding of, again, character coming through with them. Wile E. The Roadrunner is strangely almost, despite being running all the time, is strangely almost passive. And it's Wile E's hubris that mainly trips him. Oh, and the occasional faulty ACME product.
Large boulder.
Also, I should say, Marvin the Martian is also created around about this time. Thanks to working with Bugs Bunny. Chuck Jones is also doing Bugs Bunny's films at this period of time in the mid to late 40s, and his Bugs was very different than other Bugs, or quite different than other Bugs. The great thing about the character is there's a lot of different things that could come out of that character. He was initially based on a screwball character like Daffy Duck, but sort of Chuck's take on him was more of an everyman seeking righteous vengeance through trickery and deceit. And that's something that always comes through, and it's something that he's always pitched against, like, much more powerful characters. So he has a right to take that sort of vengeance rather than just messing with someone for the sake of messing with someone. Okay, and I'll finish off before we head into the 50s with 1948. He wins his first Oscar for Sentimental Reasons, which is a Pepe Le Pew cartoon.
Pepe Le Pew, yeah.
Yeah.
Sex crime masquerading as an animation.
There's a discussion there.
Pepe Le Pew, of course. Like, He's kind of the Warner Brothers character who hasn't found a way to be modernized, because he was based around that one premise, which is a little hard to translate to modern audiences.
Yeah.
But Pepe Le Pew, the film's serviceable for its time, but yeah.
And if you've seen a Pepe Le Pew cartoon, chances are this is the one that you've seen. The cat thrown into the perfume shop to deal with the skunk and getting the white strip across it.
Yeah. Fast and Furious, the first Wile E, Coyote, and Roadrunner cartoon was 1949 as well. So.
Oh, cool. Actually, yeah. Let's say, like, okay, for sentimental reasons, 1948 was Chuck's first Oscar, but not the production company's first Oscar. They'd already won previously through Tex Avery, and you know what? It would have been smart that I actually put down the cartoon that won it, and I did not. So apologies on that one. But yeah, it was Warner Brothers' second Oscar, and he'd go on to win 2 more Oscars. One in 1950 for the documentary cartoons So Much for So Little, and one in 65 for The Dot and the Line.
Which
that brings us to
about maths. Yeah. Oh, okay. Mid-career Chuck Jones. Okay, so the 50s kind of represents the core of what we recognize as Chuck's work. So opening with really the beginning of the Rabbit the Hunting trilogy. So Bugs Bunny versus Daffy versus Elmo.
Yeah, and it's the first time Bugs and Daffy have been pitched together.
Yeah. So the Hunting trilogy, those 3 cartoons, Rabbit Fire in 51, Rabbit Seasoning in 52, and Duck Rabbit Duck in 53. Really, really tight comedy, relying on a lot of Chuck developing his rules of comedy. And he tended to, although he had, I've got the list of 9 rules that he had for Roadrunner cartoons, which are pretty cool. The Roadrunner cannot harm the Coyote except by going beep beep. No outside force can harm the Coyote, only by his own ineptitude or failure of an ACME product. The Coyote could stop any time if he were not a fanatic. No dialogue ever except beep beep. The Roadrunner must stay on the road, otherwise, logically, he would not be called the Roadrunner.
Yep.
All action must be confined to the natural environment of the 2 characters, the Southwest American desert. All material, tools, weapons, or mechanical conveniences must be obtained from the ACME Corporation. Wherever possible. Yeah, wherever possible, make gravity the Coyote's greatest enemy. And last one, the Coyote is always more humiliated than harmed by his failures.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the great rules. There's a couple that have appeared but are not necessarily official. There's the audience's sympathy must remain with the Coyote, and the Coyote is never allowed to catch or eat the Roadrunner. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, there is one where Wile E. Coyote takes on Bugs Bunny
and speaks during that time.
That's right. And it's like, I'm Wile E. Coyote, super
genius. Yeah.
It's like,
But he's not against the Roadrunner.
No, he's up against Bugs Bunny, which is even worse. So he actually explains to Bugs why he's the superior animal, and therefore he should really just lay down and just die for it. And of course, Bugs just takes him to town. It's great. It's good.
But the Chuck puts out his rule of 3. Chuck Jones's rule of 3 is essentially you can have the same joke 3 times as long as the third has a twist. So which
that definitely sums up the Roadrunner stories.
well,
That's the thing.
it sucks up the hunting trilogy as well.
Yeah. The rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season, fire. And then goes through the actual joke. So you see how funny it actually is a second time, complete with Daffy's, bill going up. It's
to the last one where Bugs just grabs the gun and goes, rabbit season straight away.
Yep.
That's it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it holds up now. It's great.
it's amazing.
But he was always trying to subvert your expectations with what was going to happen in those sight gags. They never get old, and they're never repetitive. There's always.
I mean, there's this golden little circle because they had the perfect voice actor. They had the perfect animator. They had the perfect team doing all that. I could never understand why the Coyote couldn't just buy food. I mean, sure.
He is hubris.
Yeah, he's a coyote. He's a coyote. His job is to hunt roadrunners.
That's right. It's all hubris and fanaticism. Yeah. It's all self-inflicted. That's what makes it work. If it wasn't self-inflicted, the Roadrunner cartoons would have gone nowhere fast. And I just remember as a kid, the first point of contact when it came to cartoons and suppressing cartoons and trying to ban kids from cartoons was the Roadrunner cartoons. Oh, they're so violent. Oh, they teach kids wonky physics. I remember lots of articles and lots of hand-wringing about the fact that kids didn't understand physics properly. They were brought up on cartoon physics and hubris. But yeah,
I mean,
it was like how Doctor Who and the Goodies was Mary Whitehouse's first go-to whenever the moral crusader was out to try and shut down television for kids. Roadrunner cartoons were the lightning rod for anything to do with panicky parents, violence, and television, and all that stuff. They were always trotted out as the example of how terrible television was and how terrible cartoons were, and all the rest of it. Yeah,
ridiculous, really.
Completely.
So 53 had the release of Duck Amuck, and Duck Amuck is generally seen one of the Chef's Kiss animations. Duck Amuck. It is the one where Daffy Duck is tormented by the animator, later revealed to be Bugs Bunny as the animator, but so cleverly tortured through an entire 7-minute cartoon,
really good.
and in such unique animation ways. So even to changing the frame rate and having animation frames skip, drifting from scene to scene, backgrounds not working correctly. There's the closing titles fall down on his head. Like it's meta. It's definitely meta.
And the decades before meta was a thing. Yeah.
Oh,
there was a sequel
it's not
too.
the first time Warner Brothers broke the fourth wall, but it's probably the most memorable time.
It's the poster child of it. And I think they did a sequel with Bugs Bunny as well.
Yeah, so the Bugs Bunny sequel called Rabbit Rampage has Elmer Fudd as the animator. And Bugs gets tormented, but it's kind of weird because I don't think we're not used to seeing Bugs get tormented through an animation, and having Elmer at the end going he it's me. Yeah, it's
But they sort of hit their stride in the 50s because there's always there's the other famous character. What's it? The singing rabbit. Oh, sorry, the singing frog.
One Froggy Evening.
That's it.
In 1955.
Brooks used in Spaceballs. It was kind of funny.
It's great.
And there's a whole pile of them. There's Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century. There's What Opera Doc. There's a whole pile of really legendary cartoons. Really, really stand out.
Look, this is why I got to pay attention. I got the slides.
Hey,
I've got them there.
Oh, look.
So Hunting Trilogy. What's up,
That
Opera Doc?
horse.
That is
horse
my
flipping
favorite
masterpiece.
animation of a horse of all time. It is the chef kiss animation of a horse. It is so gorgeous. I love it.
It's the bit of the fat horse sings.
It's so good. And Bugs in Drag. We spoke about Bugs in Drag during the Pride episode last year. Very, very cool. It's just taking the characters and running with them. What's Opera Doc really, really goes deep down a well of that. Parodying the animated parodies that Disney was putting out as part of Fantasia.
Except doing them better, arguably.
Yeah, definitely doing them better.
Certainly more entertaining.
The characterizations were much better, and they made them, cartoony as well.
That and Rabbit of Seville, both which I think Rabbit of Seville was first, wasn't it?
I think so. Rabbit of Seville, or it might have been.
I think what's Opera Doc is a refinement of it. So I think Rabbit.
Let me just check the date on Rabbit of Seville.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Rabbit of Seville, 1950.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the thing that sets those apart is that those, even though they were Warner Brothers doing a parody of Disney, they still completely understood what opera was, and that's what made it work. Yeah. So they're not frivolous by any means. That's good.
I don't know if you could say they're parodies of Disney. I mean, there's that.
Well, I think they stand on their own, basically. I don't think they're derived from anything.
Yeah. I mean, because
I didn't mean as a parody of Disney, but in taking what Disney was doing, because music, animation to music was Disney's passion. This is
but it's also the foundation of Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes. There's a reason both of those are called that. It's because they initially started off as fairly music-based animation.
Or were they ripping off the fact that Disney was popular with Silly Symphony?
Oh yeah, those. I don't disagree that those would be ripping off Disney. Yes.
Yeah. The only obvious
I'm still saying it's still there. Yeah.
I think that
rip-off
there was
Allegro non troppo in Italy in 1979.
There was a hard line drawn between Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes. I think one used new music and one used classic
throughout
music.
Throughout the period of time, there's hard lines drawn throughout that kind of gets a bit more nebulous as it goes on. 1940s, I think there was looking at one of them was color, one of them wasn't. And when everything became color, that sort of line dropped pretty much, and people were allowed to. They just kind of became almost interchangeable as a line.
Yeah. But in an era where the studio was king for animation, Chuck Jones was rising above it. The whole reason Oob iWorks and Disney didn't work out is because Oob was getting popular, and the studio was so wrapped up in needing Oob that Disney was worried about if Oob had left. So started hiring on new animators to start building up to Oob's level, and Oob didn't take that well. So that whole cycle of stopping the hero animator amongst a crowd, and then you've got Chuck, who's just doing his thing because he's learnt from all these people and he's on the Warner Brothers side of things. He's given the freedom just to shine. Some of those animations are amazing, and that's where Warner Brothers kind of golden age is right there in that 50s period.
And it's also a period where the studio itself is undergoing change, because like the early 50s, you see the breakdown of the studio system as a whole. They're not supplying directly to their own cinemas anymore, and you've got that in the early 50s, and then the mid to late 50s, you've got the rise of the TV. So it's a period where they're under a lot of stress and a lot of rapid changes that are happening.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So in 1962, the Warner Brothers Animation Cartoon Division is closed down due to rising production costs and because declining need for theatrical shorts. Warner's doesn't like MGM's Hanna-Barbera move across to television. Well, not initially. I mean, it does come back, but they basically close down the department. Chuck goes and works on Tom and Jerry at MGM for about 5 years after Warner Brothers is shut down, and it's because it's on a revival of Tom and Jerry. There's a lot of backlash because it's not classic Tom and Jerry. This is the 1960s that they're talking. It's not how it was when I was a child. Yeah.
Actually, I think Chuck got fired just before it shut down. Truth be told, he violated a contract with Warner Brothers because he worked for Gay. He wrote for Gay Paris.
Yes.
The project with UPA, which is second.
That was his wife's. His wife was working.
Yeah, and he apparently moonlighted on the animation front for it. So that was an issue, and Warner Brothers ended up firing him.
I actually have. Do I have a frame? I did have a frame of Gay Paris. There it is. So Judy Garland animation. Chuck's name is not all over it though. It's
no, it's not. I'm curious to see this. I have to admit, this is something I really don't know too much on, and I'm curious to see how it goes and what it's like. I suspect it's going to be a disaster, but I'm curious to see it as a film.
I imagine most of those 60s Tom and Jerry films would have been the sort of thing I would have ingested as a child over and over and over again. Because they were pretty common.
So anyway, that's why he's founded Sib Tower 12 Animation Studio during that time period. So he was able to work for Tom and Jerry, etc., etc.
Yeah, very cool. And then he goes on. Does some stuff. How are you going in terms of that time period, Linz?
Well, it's. I think his best works in this period are things like the stuff he did with Dr. Seuss again, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and I think he did The Cat in the Hat, which I've seen only once or twice, and then he also did Horton Hears a Who.
Yeah.
And you can tell his style is really starting to change. If I remember rightly, there was a whole controversy that I studied briefly at uni about Chuck Jones getting into trouble with the Grinch, and the way he handled it, I think, not so much rotoscoping, but he handled it in a more lifelike way, that it's in a more unanimated way, which upset all the old classic animators because it's all about the animation, You're animating a caricature of something. You're animating this thing from within, and he wasn't doing that. He was sort of doing this sort of live action style animation, which got him into a lot of hot water with his peers, which I thought was pretty weird at the time, especially when I was like, this is about late 80s, early 90s, when this was all going down. But yeah, there was all that going on. But what I like about those specials that he did, like little mini, like 25-minute movies, I think, is that they've got an interesting style and look to them. Like he's really kind of moved on from the cartoons. So when you actually get to see some of the cartoons he's worked on in like the later years, like in '78, there's a whole pile of 20-minute cartoons with the old Warner Brothers characters. There's virtually none of the slapstick, and it's nearly all clever dialogue and gags and sight setups. So it feels anemic compared to the highlights of the 60s. But
Yeah.
I think that's because his style had moved on to something a little more, I don't want to say refined, a bit more sophisticated.
Cerebral.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, because that's what pretty much the Grinch. There's a lot going on there, and so when you go back, going to the Warner Brothers cartoon seems like a bit of a step backwards or something. It's weird. You know how a lot of modern Warner Brothers cartoons are just all talk. It's like, Bugs and Daffy co-inhabiting an apartment somewhere in LA. It feels less like a Warner Brothers cartoon and more like Friends. But you can sort of see the 70s cartoons are a bit of a missing link. With some names, I'll probably chuck a few. But he also did a few other things. Like there's something called the Phantom Tollbooth, which is a part live action, part animated thing, which I've never seen before. No childhood memories, nothing. I don't know what it is.
It bombed badly, I believe.
Oh, that's probably why.
Financially,
probably never made it to Australia. It's probably what happened. I've seen a couple of things like what's it? One of the last ones I think he did was Yosemite Sam and Bugs, and it's not quite the same. That's it, From Here to Eternity, I think. And there's another one called Pulitzer Prize, which I think has Foghorn Leghorn in it. So it's sort of like a little victory parade at the end of his career.
Yeah,
And,
97 was his last Bugs Bunny.
This is like almost like nostalgia trips, really. And they've got a whole.
Oh yeah, he was definitely that period. He was a statesman of cartoons because he's tapped by Warner Brothers to do. Is it Gremlins 2? There's a
so he did the intro to Gremlins 2, which is Bugs and Daffy.
In fact,
does he make a guest appearance in Gremlins 1 or 2?
Well, I think everybody made a guest appearance in Gremlins 2.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's like it definitely feels a lot more. Well, maybe it's the 20-minute format, but it just definitely feels slower and slightly less energy. But it's still just as witty and clever. But yeah, it's just not quite the same. The thing I like about that stuff that he did was, in fact, the Seuss stories. I thought they're great. They're really good. Well worth your time.
Around the mid 70s, he was doing the Cricket in Times Square series, which are kind of overshadowed by Disney at the time. Even though Disney was on a down period, I think just the market in general was down.
It was television oriented predominantly, I think, during the late 60s, early 70s. So you had the dominance of Hanna-Barbera cartoons. It was cheaper, less money being spent given to budgets for cartoons at the time, generally.
He was treading territory that was later handled a lot better by Don Bluth and like Amblin Animation. So
that makes sense.
He was old and he was he was semi-retired, and I think
that's it.
He'd kind of been past his peak period, so just getting in and doing something every so often to keep his hand in it was kind of all he was doing. There was nothing groundbreaking.
Also, the studio culture had changed since his day as well. There was much more interference based from Harpo studio executives coming through, and even TV network executives for the affiliate stations are broadcasting to. So they were just getting notes from all over the place, apparently. They're operating on, I think, about a third of the budget they used to. That firewall that was initially under two producers that was initially there had completely disappeared. In some ways, that was responsible for the shutdown of Warner Brothers Animation earlier, because Warner Brothers didn't kind of realize what they had there and how that would be used on TV.
Until the 90s happened, that was pretty clear. I think through the 70s and 80s, where animation was essentially Saturday morning cartoons or the odd sporadic Disney film.
I think you got a few. You got a few bugs during this time,
but it definitely feels like it's in its twilight years. It's not
Yeah,
until
yeah.
the 1990s. I mean, you could argue about the 80s, but I feel that's a whole different kettle of fish. There's the whole 80s toy line era, the Reagan era. But animation doesn't feel like it's getting back on its feet again and really cutting new edges until about the 90s. And then there's a whole explosion of a whole new generation of stuff coming out.
Okay, we've talked a bit about some of the adult animation in the 60s and 70s and how that sort of came through. But yeah, I think as far as children's shorts and aimed at a younger generation, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I mean, there's definitely what Ralph Bakshi was putting out, and he's sort of like an underground indie, really. And,
Yeah.
And then there's Don Bluth, that's effectively doing an animated Spielberg. Yeah. And so he became the new Disney there for a while until Disney resurrected itself with those fantastic musicals. But yeah, there's a little period there where it felt like it fell into a hole. Unless you're into like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Transformers, there wasn't much on offer at all, and which is where I felt that was.
I still kind of like Dark Disney, but mainly for the live action stuff that it's doing at that time. But
yeah, it's more of an interesting topic of study, not something I'd necessarily seek out. But when things like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon kick off, and you even see things like Ren and Stimpy and all that sort of stuff, then you know the whole game's changed again. So it's a different era. Well, that's it. That's pretty much it. I mean, there's not much to really say in the later years, I think, apart from
it just kind of peters out, doesn't it?
It does, and it's like there's a whole pile of stuff out there, but it's like I've seen some of them.
I'm kind of glad he got to live a long life and see his labors. Like too many Hollywood stories of people that burnt out and disappear into obscurity and never heard from again. He sort of did his thing, kept his hand in it, occasionally popped up. He was the Adam West of animators.
Yeah.
But it all accumulated with his Lifetime Achievement Award in '96 at the Academy Awards, where he basically apologizes for his film.
Pretty much. It almost gets overshadowed by Robin Williams stealing the show.
Yeah, well, Robin Williams' introduction goes for twice the length of...
easily. It's at least 3/4 of the whole bloody thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I was trying to find a copy I could play it as our outro today.
Yeah. But essentially, that little event at the Oscars, I think, finally made him visible to everybody in the current generation, that contemporary generation in the 90s. And so, it kind of made Warner Brothers cartoons suddenly very respectable. At around the same time that Warner Brothers was resurrecting their old cartoons and starting to market them in a pretty aggressive way.
Yeah, led by the relationship between Daffy and Bugs, which is something that we found.
That's pretty much it. And basically, things like Space Jam and stuff kind of made it very commercially successful again. But yeah, it's that Academy speech for me is the moment he became, he's a thing, and became this kind of fondly remembered bit of nostalgia. And I think the death of Mel Blanc's around that time. It was about a couple of years before. When was that? Early 90s? Mid-early 90s? When Mel Blanc died.
95, 96, I want to say.
Yeah, it's about the same time. That was sort of like, it felt like the passing of an era. And it was sort of like, the rose-colored glasses come back on and everyone starts to critically reassess it. And turns out, a lot of it's
89, my bad.
No, really? Was that long ago?
Yeah, it's a lot earlier than I was thinking.
Makes sense. I was working at a pokey little place called Fox Creative at the time. I remember the ad.
So the
newspaper by the cells.
Just all the pictures of the Warner Brothers characters on a black background and just the word speechless, which
did it pretty well.
Intense.
Which is
really
ironic.
Yeah.
In my entire career, that was the only fortnight or so that I spent doing painted cells. So I remember this newspaper article sitting on a stack of painted cells, and I've got the house paint out trying to do Kenny Kidner or something like that. So
nice.
My only contact with cell animation, and I go and kill Mel Blanc. Damn. Anyway,
Oh,
In his later years, Chuck devoted himself a little bit to science literacy. He had the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity. He was teaching animation as well. So, and he was really one of those creative stayers. And I think his mark was definitely left. He's the animator that inspired me really to get into the industry. I grew up on those Warner Brothers cartoons. Love them to bits.
Yep.
And can watch them over and over again.
Well, if he was based in Australia, he'd have a whole TAFE course built around him, wouldn't he?
True. He should. Maybe
he should. He would have definitely formed a whole TAFE course around him easily. In fact, he'd be writing the bloody units, I'm sure.
True.
Anyway, we can but
well, we should start wrapping up. We have gone over the hour. One small note I should mention. Up and coming, and we will announce it soon enough, but the 330 is on its way, people. So 330 animation competition, if you don't know what it is, it's our 3 months to produce 3 30 seconds of animation competition, judged internationally. You can enter internationally if you're watching this from overseas. And 330. Let's go.
Audience wakes up.
Yes. You know what? Like, the 330 is an amazing competition. It's well worth it for the screening at the end. Looking like August again for the screening this year. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's the plan. Yeah. More or less. I think we're going to have a VFX section this time. Exactly what that looks like, we're not quite sure yet, but we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, the VFX category this year, which I dropped on everyone last year. So,
so therefore we're doing it.
So therefore we're doing it. It's my last year as chair, so let's go out on a bang. And even if it fails miserably, you can say, "Oh, that was the old chairs."
Well, if it does fail, we'll fail heroically. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, what's that?
Oh,
Also, Lightbox is now out on Spotify.
Oh my god!
Previous episodes are being uploaded. So yes, you can listen to us as you drive. You don't get to see our faces, which is, may be a good thing. But
I think that's an upside.
Possibly. Cool.
But so in terms of that, I'm gonna start winding us down and say, any last words that we want to say about Chuck Jones?
Uh-huh.
Other than there's a whole lot we haven't covered here as well.
Technically, we could delve deeply. Yeah,
we could have done a whole episode.
I encourage people to look up for a picture of Chuck Jones during the writers' strike in was it the late 30s, early 40s, and him carrying a guillotine at the front of Disney. That's a heck of a picture.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of them, actually.
Yeah, he's the one with the hood up the front, at the very front.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, the writer's strike. It's pretty intense. Look it up, people. I'm looking at it now. I won't share it on this. Could be construed as something different if you just saw it in image context.
That's fair enough. So yeah, there's a look. We've tried to cover a life in about an hour. We did our best, but there's a lot more there. So please look it up, do more research, watch the cartoons. You'll learn a lot. For animation, you'll learn a lot for writing.
So tune in next month, and because I seem to be the wellspring of ideas for the episodes going forward, and if there's anything you all want to see, send us messages, ask us those questions. But next month, I think we should be delving deeply into the worlds of Don Bluth.
Sounds good. Makes perfect sense.
So let's talk about another animator who sort of grew out of Disney and took it places. So Don Bluth episode in April. As we're heading towards, I haven't decided whether we should do another Pride. I mean, we just dabbled with the Pride level of the animation last time. Do we go? And our Pride was one of our longest episodes as well. So,
but I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was good. Let's see whether we delve down that hole again as well. Pun not intended. Yes. I suppose it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
That's all, folks. Goodbye from me.
Nice.
Nice.
Good night.